Hey, Obi Trades! I wanted to do a video analysis update on something that happened last night, and really it's been happening for, all week, right? And I'll get into the, it's pretty abstract, I'll be honest. It's more, abstract probably than anything that I've talked about. But abstract thought and occult thinking, which remember, occult just means hidden, and esoteric thinking has saved my life. All right? It has. That's why I talk about this stuff. And I know it could be used to save other people's lives. I also know that it could be used to prevent a bunch of ritual murders. That's why I talk about this. And I know this because I personally was almost a victim of one. And a warning sent out to me by a member of the Gematria community, I would say the leader of the Gematria community, who is Zachary K. Hubbard. He didn't just tell me that there was going to be a power outage and to look out. No. This man told me once a week, sometimes once a day, for about 4 or 5 months, that there was going to be a massive power outage on February 14th, specifically in the state and cities that I was in. And he was correct. On February 14th, 2021, I woke up at 3 a.m. in Dallas, the 214 area code, and a bizarre, stunning, shocking prediction had come true. A man named Zachary K. Hubbard said that the elites were going to stage a massive power outage blackout that was going to be very serious. It was specifically going to affect parts of Oregon, which did happen. But he specifically said, partially because of what's right here, this was for Dallas, right? So Public Enemy, they came out and they released an album, What Are You Gonna Do When the Grid Goes Down, right? What are you gonna do when the grid goes down? And they released this album 214 days before February 14th, 2021, right? And this background picture right here is Arizona. And Arizona is the Valentine State. Arizona is called the Valentine State because its history says that it was founded on Valentine's Day. It was discovered on Valentine's Day. Arizona is officially known as the Valentine State. That's a fact. So when they posted something called, what are you going to do when the grid goes down in the Valentine State 214 days before Valentine's Day, and I lived in the 214 area code, and the state of Texas has its own power grid, so this is something that's always talked about, I was listening. And I've noticed that a lot of people listen when the rituals could affect them. That's a ritual. It might affect Florida. It might affect, that's going on in California, man. That's Hawaii. Well, when it's your state, you listen. So I was listening. 214, and right before that happened, by the way, J.J. Watt left Houston for Arizona, right? J.J. Watt, like wattage, like power outage, watts, unit of measurement. J.J. Watt left Houston for the Valentine State. Deshaun Watson, another Watt, also left Houston. And when that happened, this man, Zachary K. Hubbard, was ringing a damn bell. If you're in Dallas and you're in Houston, You need to watch to F out. February 14th needs to be circled on your calendar. So I woke up on February 14th in a deep freeze. Unprecedented deep freeze. I called my parents and I said, hey, this is serious. I know we've had winter storms in Texas before. This is serious. We need to cancel all our appointments this week. We need to get food, shelter, and water. We need to prepare. This is gonna be a big thing. Every single person that I told that to said the exact same thing. I've lived in Texas for 50 years, 60 years. Snow and ice has never stuck to the ground so that you couldn't drive on the streets for more than 48 hours. It almost had never done it for more than 24 hours, is what most people said. Oh, snow never sticks in Texas for more than, 24 hours, 48 hours. Maybe we miss 2 days of work, but then we go back, right? I was like, no, guys, this is the big one. This is the big one. And at first we laughed. But after the first night, we started to realize we were screwed. We had a little bit of water because I'd prepared and stocked up a little bit, but we didn't have food for 5 days for 4 people. And we couldn't get food. We couldn't get water. We didn't have access to water. Not in our pipes. We couldn't even drink faucet water. Couldn't use the bathroom. It was bad. Crapping in plastic bags and, throwing them in the dumpster. All that. Bad. We were running out of food. We didn't care about that. We were about to freeze too. No heat. And because of this information, we made the decision to call a family member who was at a nursing home and they had backup generators. We thought we were going to be there maybe for 24 hours. We ended up being there for 4 or 5 days. We couldn't go home until about Saturday, almost an entire week. It's that bad. Every single person who I told said, I'm sorry. Thank you. And it wasn't even about that. I don't need thanks. I ain't the person to thank. This guy is the person to thank. So when people ask, why talk about this stuff, and this stuff gets real. It got real in Hawaii. It's gotten real in Texas. Let's see what happened recently and how real it was. So the big controversy was that last night an Iowa football player, let's just see if we can play it. Up here. So the controversy is this. We'll just watch it. So the Minnesota punter, he's going to punt the ball. And we're going to see he's telling his teammates, hey, get away. And then everyone tries to tackle him, starts running after him, all that, right? And there's no flag on the field. Look, there's a minute 20 in the game. Look at this. A minute 20 in the game. He just put the team on his back, scored a touchdown, won the game. People are going crazy. I mean, this is a historical school moment. This is the greatest moment of this person's life. They won. This is a walk-off. I mean, this is probably the best. Wait, look at this guy. I mean, he deserves it. That's, and think about the energy harvesting. We'll talk about the ritual aspect, the energy harvesting, all these emotions. There's still no flag. Look at this. There's still no flag. That's why the people scream, there's no flags on the field. There's no flags on the field because you can't review flags besides targeting. That's why they'll be, there's no flags. There's still no flag. What is going on here? I mean, this is bizarre. What? And now they're reviewing it, right? It's ridiculous. They're reviewing it, and all sources, all of them, say that what they were originally reviewing was he was out of bounds. Was he out of bounds right there? Look at this. Was he out of bounds right there? That's why they were reviewing it, because that is reviewable. Did he step out of bounds? That's why they're reviewing it. They're not reviewing it to see if he called a fair catch, because that's a fair catch penalty, and the only judgment call penalties that can be reviewed are targeting. They are reviewing right now, is his foot out of bounds? And that's the only reason they can review this, to see if he fumbled the ball, if he stepped out of bounds, and if he crossed the plane of the goal line. That's it. You can't review a judgment call penalty, right? And so this big debate sparks, right? And I've been watching college football for a bit. And before this game happened, I'll just skip to a little bit. Before this game happened with all this hospital stuff, with all this hospital stuff, I was thinking about this on Friday. And I swear on my life, on Friday, right after I posted this, I was like, oh, they're coding Iowa football hard. Because I knew about this Iowa football tradition. We'll get into that later. But I was like, Iowa football, they've got this famous tradition. We'll just read it now. This is why I was thinking about Iowa football. I was like, oh man, these hospital bombings, Iowa football is connected to hospitals. So I was thinking with like the Gaza hospital bombings, I was like, okay, they're coding Iowa football right now, right? We need to watch out, because the Hawkeye wave, according to, Hawkeye sports, the Hawkeye wave is the best tradition in college sports. When the Kennett clock hits 0 at the end of the first quarter, 70,000 football fans turn their attention from the field to UI Stead Family Children's Hospital, right? Just like the Gaza hospital, Israel blew up a hospital full of children. So that's why I was thinking about this. And I knew this tradition. They've talked about this tradition since, this is not some obscure tradition. Iowa football is known for this. They are the only program that has this type of tradition, and this is heavily publicized, not just by Iowa football, but by the NCAA, by all, the sports media. They talk about this. This is not some unknown thing. They make sure we know this. Iowa football hospital. In unison, they wave at the pediatric patients and their families watching the game. The tradition, the patients and family members view this genuine act of kindness as life-changing, inspiring, a wave of hope. So just think about in the back of my mind, what happened in Gaza, 2 hospitals were blown up, right? And so this is the hospital wave, right? Waving at a hospital, like bye-bye, we just blew up a hospital, so that hospital's gone, bye-bye, right? In unison, they wave to the pediatric patients and their families watching the game, right? As this tradition, born in 2017, etches itself into Hawkeye lore, the University of Iowa and the UI Department of Intercollegiate Athletics want to enhance and involve the movement starting in 2022. For every home game the Iowa football team plays inside Kinnick Stadium, athletics in coordination with the UI Stead Family Children's Hospital Kid Captain program will ask that week's Kid Captain to help select a new song to accompany the Hawkeye wave, right? So this is very embedded in Hawkeye football. Let's just get back to what happened. Sorry, we had to skip a little bit. All right. So this big debate comes out, and we're really just the Big Ten is gonna comment on this. So we're gonna figure out if they agree with me or not. Anyway, this big debate sparks. Let's make sure we just understand what debate's going on. Judgment calls like a fair catch, holding, and pass interference have to be made on field. They have to be made during the play. They can't be thrown retroactively. This was a retroactive fair catch, and it's only happened once before with Alex Erickson. So it's not unprecedented. It is once precedented. It has only happened once before that they retroactively reviewed a fair catch. That person who they did that with was also in the Big Ten, and he plays in the NFL right now. His name's Alex Erickson. We'll get to that later. Iowa City, the Cooper DeJean punt return touchdown that was and then wasn't will be talked about in Iowa football circles for a long time, right? I don't know why I said right. That was the top takeaway from Minnesota's 12-10 victory against Iowa Saturday here at Kinnick Stadium. Officials ruled that DeJean gave an invalid fair catch signal before the ball off a bounce and before taking the ball off a bounce and running it into the end zone from 54 yards out. So the officials ruled the Gene gave an invalid fair catch signal before taking the ball off a bounce and running it into the end zone from 54 yards out. So this is why I thought it was kind of weird just to say the official rule, even though the official rule is that you can't retroactively review this. Even if you could retroactively review this, he puts his hand up over his head at the very last second because he's catching a ball that's bouncing, right? He's putting his hand up like this to catch the ball that's over his head. That's why his hand is over his head, you know, and he doesn't do that till the last second. It's like below his waist at his shoulder, waving it off like every punt returner always does. And then the last second, he puts his hand up to catch this ball that's in the air, right? So let's just go further. So this is kind of the standard conversation. Did Iowa get robbed? This guy says rules are rules. He doesn't understand them, in my opinion. But this guy says they have to blow the play dead. You can't retroactively call holding. You can't retroactively call a pass interference. You can't retroactively even call a face mask or a hands to the face. It has to be seen while it's happening. Okay? So that's what he says. They have to blow the play dead. You can't determine that it was on a replay. And the proof for this is that when they are replaying this to review it, they're reviewing if he stepped out of bounds. They're not even reviewing if he fair caught it. Okay. Because you can't review if he fair caught it. Alex Arison punt return is the only other one to be retroactively called back on a fair catch. We'll get to that later. It was also a Big Ten game. Wait, is he number 86? No, he's not number 86. Okay. So this was a little more of this conversation. Did Iowa get robbed? He clearly pointed with, so this is the argument against this. He clearly pointed with his right hand and waved his left arm, which is an invalid fair catch signal. Okay, so the point is, even if that's true, it doesn't matter because it has to be called on the field like holding. Okay, it has to be called on the field like pass interference and hands to the face. Okay, so he says, long story short, that's a penalty where it's a penalty. You can't review a penalty besides targeting where the receiving team loses the ability to advance the ball. So this is what he says, and I agree with him. They went to review to make sure he was out of bounds and then called the penalty. That's actually not allowed, and he's correct, right? And he's a Badger. He's not even a fucking Wisconsin fan. He's just objectively like, yeah, man, this is stupid. Maybe he saw it here. Anyway, you know, I think Badger Dave is being objective. I think he's right. They went to review it to make sure he was in bounds and then called the penalty. That's actually not allowed. And then Jackhammer, I think he's right. He says if that's true, it's going to be interesting to hear what the Big Ten says. So even he says if this is actually the rule, which it is, then Iowa did get robbed. And he's right. Okay, so rituals, sports, you know, maybe this isn't, you know, the best place for this slide. I want to get back to the fact that this is abstract. I don't want people to watch this video and say, oh, you know, he didn't prove it like these videos. So I'm not going to have the word proof in the title of this. I believe in these videos, proof that the NFL is scripted and proof that Kobe Bryant's death in a ritual sacrifice, in a helicopter was a ritual sacrifice. I believe I proved that in these videos. Fully proven. In my opinion, in these videos. And I believe I could, by the way, fully prove that Antonin Scalia was ritually sacrificed. And I actually think I could get that investigation opened in a West Texas court, and I think I could win. Anyway, what I also wanted to show these slides for is just a reminder for those who maybe knew that they ritually sacrifice people and they sing up sports with these rituals. So I think probably the most easy, you know, and they also do predictive programming. So Kobe Bryant's probably the biggest piece of evidence that they predictively program. I think this one's the one that's like, if you don't believe predictive programming is real, you really don't know about what happened to Kobe Bryant. Because there was so much blatant predictive programming for his death in a helicopter that there were actually people who tweeted he was going to die in a helicopter crash before it happened just because they saw this commercial and they were like woke. They were like, oh yeah, that's predictive programming. Okay. But this video really kind of proves how they connect sports rituals with, you know, what's going on in the world, right? A lot of people can't fathom that a basketball game, an NBA game, even when they're getting paid millions of dollars, you know, and all that could be scripted or ritual. Anyway, but this video really kind of proves it. I think I've got a good summary for, what happens in this video. But just to kind of recap real quick, this is Pete Davidson right here. Pete Davidson's dad died on 9/11, okay? And Pete Davidson is wearing a Michael Jackson hoodie. The reason that matters is because Michael Jackson died on the day that Steph Curry was drafted into the NBA. That also happens to be Del Curry's birthday, which is Steph Curry's father. Okay, so he died on June 25th, 2009. That's the day Steph Curry was drafted into the NBA, and that's also Del Curry's father's birthday. Steph Curry was drafted out of Davidson College. This is Pete Davidson. He's wearing this Michael Jackson sweater to pay tribute to it, and the reason that the way that they're getting 9/11 involved is because the amount of three-pointers for the record was 2,977, and that also happens to be exactly how many people died on 9/11 officially because of the attacks. One of them was Pete Davidson's dad. Okay, and they're in New York playing the Knicks. So that's kind of an example of this ritual and how it all works. Okay, so this video proves that they predictively program. They have to get us to accept this by showing us it before it happens. So that's why we're going to talk about what they could be showing us before it happens in this video. This video really proves how they get sports involved, okay? So I did want to address this Alex Erickson connection because it's not it's not an obscure connection. I don't think. This other guy, it's the exact same play, and this one's honestly even worse because this one he doesn't even get close to having his hands above his head. It's also not retroactively called, and it's also retroactively called, and like he wasn't even close to being out of bounds, So that one was also like very sketchy. But that's the only other time that a retroactive, fair catch signal penalty was thrown. Okay, according to ESPN, that's the only other time. At least in notable Big Ten college lore. Maybe it happened in a high school somewhere. Maybe it happened, at some AA game. But every single news article you read about this, I promise, will connect this to Alec Erickson's punt return that happened, I believe, in 2015. Okay, so Alex Erickson, in this video right here, I talk about Mike Williams a lot. Mike Williams, one of the reasons I talk about Mike Williams is because the Aries variant matches with his name in 3 ciphers, and he was sacrificed in a 9/11 ritual. He was hit in the head with a steel beam before his team played the New York Jets on 9/11. And so he was hit in the head with a steel beam 55 days before his former teams play each other. His name equals 55. I've gone into that connection a lot more in this video. But the other connection is that Mike Williams and 9/11 are being coded with the Aries variant, which is the new variant of the virus. So I thought that was, interesting. I've made this connection in this video to how, a lot of the jab passports started in Israel and how, World War III is breaking out right now and where that can all mean. But Alex Erickson, I think it's interesting that he's being referenced in this very similar play because he also matches with Mike Williams and Aries variant in 3 ciphers. So that's a very interesting one. I talked about how Bronny James's collapse was also a very similar thing. They all equal 136 and 161. They all match in at least 2 or 3 ciphers. But really the big thing is that they all match with Aries variant, right? But Mike Williams and Alex Erickson, we got an Aries variant match in 3 ciphers. Mike Williams was just ritually sacrificed. Alex Erickson, he's still in the NFL. So look for him to have a big day. Anyway, so the debate, isn't if it's a fair catch, this guy is saying if the rule is that you can't retroactively call it, then, they got robbed. That's my opinion, but we're going to go a little deeper into the football debate. I think the football debate, we got it. You got your opinions on the rules. It's, subjective, objective, congrats to Minnesota. You won, Golden Gophers. Okay, anyway. Let's get into abstract, occult mode. Oh, one thing, one thing that I think is also just kind of evidence for, before we get into occult mode, one thing that I also think is kind of evidence that a ritual took place is how unusual this call is. A referee does not want to be remembered after the game. No one wants to know, hey, you don't come to see the referees play, but the refs don't want to be remembered after the game, right? And so they're making this, in my opinion, against the rules call. And we're going to talk about how big of a call this was, kind of how much of an atrocity this was, and why it's a lot different than, hey, they didn't call pass interference on this throw to the end zone. Hey, they missed the holding call. Hey, I thought that targeting call that they reviewed was cheap, but you can actually review targeting. You can't actually review an invalid fair catch signal. We're going to talk about how much of an atrocity this was and kind of why it might be a little evidence of scripting and some ritualism going on that we're going to talk about later. So typically the only judgment call penalties that are reviewed are targeting, whether someone was out of bounds, in possession of the ball, crossed the goal line, or is a victim of targeting is commonly reviewed. Judgment calls like holding, hands to the face, and pass interference have to be called on the spot. They cannot be retroactively reviewed. Okay, this not only saves time, but it's because if an official didn't perceive holding or PI while the play took place, while the play was in action, then coaches would just challenge every touchdown and look for PI, hands to the face, right? You're going to go lineman by lineman. Hey, is he holding his jersey? Hey, did his pinky touch his face mask? Hey, I think he was holding him down here. They can't review PI. They can't review holding. They can't review judgment calls, even ones that involve grabbing the face mask, because it has to be made on the spot by the judge. The only penalty that can be reviewed that isn't called on the field is targeting, okay? That's such a big thing to understand. That's why it's such kind of a red flag that this is happening. We'll talk about a different type of flag that might be going on too. This not only saves time, but the original purpose of the review was to see if it was out of bounds. They weren't even reviewing, so they were reviewing it for a legal reason. This is also kind of weird, right? Connecting to what we're going to talk about later, right? The Gaza hospital. They're reviewing it for a legal reason, and then they just completely have a illegal outcome, right? So they have legal intentions and illegal outcome. It starts off like, oh yeah, you can do this. You can review it because maybe he was out of bounds. And we're using that review actually as a doorway to, get into, calling it, out of bounds. So to me, it's almost like what it seems like. This player put the team on his back, and the refs really thought they could control the script. Hey, man, he's going to get tackled. He's going to go down. It's going to be over, right? Well, I think he kind of took the script into his own hands, and the officials didn't like that. So they needed to, hey, we need to negate this call. Well, we can't review if it was a fair catch. Okay. Hey guys, the script says this is the hospital ritual. The big guys upstairs, they say we can't have the hospital team win this game, right? So we got to review this play and negate this touchdown. We'll say it's because he might have been out of bounds, and then we're going to, pull a fast one. All right, so Iowa got robbed by the refs, right? Refs rob teams every Saturday, even though it's usually, not by reviewing a judgment call that wasn't called on the field besides targeting. So who cares, right? Well, more is going on, right? More is going on here to the occult, right? Who cares that they're releasing an album called What Are You Going to Do When the Grid Goes Down 214 days before Valentine's Day in the Valentine's State? And then the big Houston star Watt goes to the Valentine's Day before the Valentine's State before, the big power outage, the grid goes down, right? Why does this matter? All right. We'll talk about why it matters. Don't worry. Elites use sports to pay tribute to victims of ritual sacrifice, like Kobe Bryant and the victims of 9/11 with performative rituals. Think of how LeBron and the Lakers won the bubble championship on Father-Daughter Day, how Karen Bryant is the LA Sparks GM who was born on 8/24, which is now Mamba Day, and the 3 times his death in the helicopter was foreshadowed, very blatantly showing him dying in a helicopter crash. There was even a prank where he got into a helicopter, had the pilot turn off the engine, and then fell in free fall before the engine was turned back on. So there were serious, at least 3 very blatant predictive programming rituals for Kobe Bryant. in his death, so we would accept it, right? And then they had to pay tribute to it afterwards with Karen Bryant, with, Kobe, with LeBron, and, the Lakers winning on Father-Daughter Day, right? So how Pete Davidson, right? His father died on 9/11. He was wearing a Michael Jackson sweater, which is Del Curry's birthday. Del Curry's birthday is the day Michael Jackson died, and it's also the day that Steph Curry was drafted out of Davidson for him to break the three-point record with 2,977 shots against New York, which was the same amount of people who died in New York on 9/11, okay? We're going to talk about another rules controversy with Iowa, right? It wasn't just one rules controversy this week. I thought this was a little weird, too. Because, I don't follow Iowa football, and I don't really follow Big Ten football. Okay, I don't want, you don't need to worry that I'm some Iowa homer. And I have it in for Iowa, or I hate Michigan State, Anyway, abstract time. I noticed the connection with college football and the Israel-Palestine war because when this all started, we all heard the news about it when we woke up on a Saturday morning, which was the day of the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma, right? That famous rivalry that is across the Red River, kind of like how this famous rivalry revolves around the Red Sea, okay? So Red Sea rivals. Who are the big Red Sea rivals? Who are the big Red River rivals? Well, they're playing today on the same field. Anyway, after Israel blew up the second hospital in Palestine, I began to be extremely convinced that Iowa football was being coded because of their famous hospital wave tradition that occurs at the end of every first quarter and is a publicized staple of the program. That same week, Iowa was caught up in another bizarre rules controversy regarding John Harbaugh. So, John Harbaugh, maybe it was Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, right? Same, elite, scripted, shill club, right? So Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, whichever Harbaugh is going to do this ritual, right? He is apparently in trouble for scouting teams, right? And so this news broke this week. Jim Harbaugh, for the Michigan coach, is being investigated for scouting teams. And one of the teams that they think he was illegally stealing signs from was Iowa. So the big controversy was that Jim Harbaugh sent an in-person scout to go watch Iowa football offense. And so they could steal their calls, steal their signs, whatever, right? All while the Astros are playing. Anyway, Jim Harbaugh is another rules controversy that Iowa got caught up in this week. And the big joke was that Iowa's offense is really, really bad, right? So it was like torture to have them go watch Iowa's offense. And I'm pretty sure Iowa was the most recent game. Don't quote me on that. But everyone was joking, right? And this guy said it right here. Everyone made the same joke, right? They get it in your minds. Everyone made the same joke about Iowa amid Michigan sign stealing scandal. So this was all going on while the hospitals were being blown up. And I knew that Iowa was connected to hospitals because of this tradition. So that's when, things start to click. So everyone's making this joke about Iowa and another rules controversy. And then, a big, it's a big story, right? All the NFL teams are saying it's called scouting. All the NFL players are saying, hey, you're allowed to do this, right? Kind of like it's a big rules controversy. The rules controversy, I believe, is a big part of the ritual. This rules controversy, and Iowa being involved. I think the rules controversy is the ritual. I think this is the ritual because of what? Well, one of our buddies, one of America's buddies, in the Middle East, they broke some rules recently. Yeah, they broke some big rules. And they felt bad about it because they really tried to tell everyone that they didn't do it, right? So on 10/18, Israel claimed that they did not blow up a Gaza hospital that killed hundreds of Palestinians just before U.S. President Joe Biden visited Israel as the conflict between the Israeli military and the Hamas militant group raged. So who bombed the hospital in Gaza? Israelis and Palestinians have blamed each other for the bombing, right? So on 10/18, Israel's like, we would never blow up a hospital. We would never blow up a hospital. It was the Palestinians, right? We would never violate the Geneva Conventions, and then, the next 2 days later, right? 2 days later, Israelis gone from, hey, we're never ever gonna blow up a hospital. We're not some disgusting terrorist, right? And then Israel's like, fuck it, we're gonna blow up a hospital today. Get the hell out of the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza, right? And this was what? Right before the Iowa hospital ritual, right? So what's kind of going on in the minds of America right now? A big ally is violating the Geneva Conventions. They are blowing up hospitals full of brown people, right? We have to accept this. How are we going to accept this, right? How are we going to accept it? Well, we don't need to worry about that because everyone in America is obsessed with football. So we can have these rituals with this team that is associated with hospitals, right? This team that's associated with hospitals, we're just going to involve them in a scandal about how it's okay to break rules. You see what I mean? We're going to involve this team that's known for hospitals in a scandal about how it's okay to break rules. Yeah, you're not allowed to review, you're not allowed to review a judgment call. They only reviewed it to see if he was out of bounds. Yeah, and they robbed Iowa, but whatever, man. We'll see what the Big Ten says, right? Yeah, they violated the Geneva Conventions, but, what are you going to do, right? Oh, hey, they're about to blow up another hospital. Oh, that's our ally, right? Hey, we're not actually supposed to do that, right? The Geneva Conventions say we're not supposed to do that. By the second hospital bombing, Iowa football was strongly coded, in my opinion. Were the rules controversies this week paying an homage to the controversy of whether Israel is violating the rules of war. So Iowa's associated with hospitals. Israel is blowing up hospitals. So Iowa is involved in a rules controversy, and we're all supposed to accept the rules controversy, right? We'll see what the Big Ten says. I know it's against the rules, but we'll see what the Big Ten says, right? We're supposed to accept this rules controversy. And so they have a rules controversy with a team known for hospitals, connected to hospitals in the minds of the masses. It's mind control. By bombing a hospital, America's ally Israel violated Article 4 of the Geneva Conventions that were set in place after World War II. Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilian persons in time of war. For Geneva Convention 1949, this convention focuses on the protection of civilians in times of armed conflict. It outlines the rights and safeguards for civilians who are not taking part in hostilities, as well as those who are under occupation. So the Iowa rule controversies this week, are they programming us to accept that we're, funding the genocide of the Palestinian people, right? How do the Geneva Conventions apply to Palestinian children? This is Al Jazeera, by the way. Several articles and additional protocols, particularly in the Fourth Convention, afford protection to children during armed conflict, right? These include establishing hospitals and safety zones, right? So they violated the Hospital Geneva Convention, right? So we need to convince people it's okay to violate hospital-related conventions, right? Hospital team, let's violate this convention. We'll see what the Big Ten says, right? Oh, yeah, who cares if they just broke all the rules, stole that game from Iowa, and ended their playoff hopes? Who cares, man? We'll see what the Big Ten says, right? We'll see what, we'll see what Joe Biden says, Maybe we'll give them more money so they can blow up more hospitals, right? But these Geneva Conventions that Israel violated included establishing hospitals and safety zones for children under the age of 15, ensuring access to essential foodstuffs and clothing for children in areas that are under siege, special care for children who are orphaned. So even this one is also I'm pretty sure they're doing a blockade. I haven't done enough research on the blockade that Israel is doing, but this is also a violation of the Geneva Conventions, preventing food and clothing for the Palestinian women and children to have access to, right? We don't need to bomb them. We can just starve them to death, right? Evacuating children to safe areas and reuniting them with their families. When children are evacuated, ensuring that ministers of all religions, medical personnel, and equipment are available when children are removed, right? So, let's look at this. I mean, this is all Al Jazeera, right? Al Jazeera, Israel violated the 4th Geneva Convention. All right, that's not my opinion. That is an official fact. How are children affected by Israel's attacks on Gaza? In addition to the hundreds of children who have been killed by Israeli airstrikes, children in Gaza are also being deprived of food and medicine in violation of the 4th Geneva Convention. That is because Israel announced a total blockade of Gaza and after the Hamas attack in southern Israel last Saturday, making it clear that it would not allow food, medicines, fuel, and other essential commodities into the coastal enclave. We barely have enough food to feed our children. Zainab Matar, a mother of 4, told Al Jazeera on Wednesday, we can't keep our children warm at night because we lack proper clothing, right? Sorry, sis, feel you there. 2021. International organizations have been calling for the establishment of a humanitarian corridor, claiming that Gaza's medical facilities are at a breaking point. So far, Israel has refused to budge and has bombed the Rafah crossing. So they said, hey, can you please just follow the Geneva Conventions? They were like, nah, actually, we got another bomb for you, right? So they bombed the Rafah crossing that connects the enclave to Egypt, right? Our friendly, allies, right? So the second hospital, by the time the second Gaza hospital bombing happened, it reminded me of a plot in The Dark Knight where the Joker tells the news he is going to blow up a hospital. Unfortunately, the Joker actually let the hospital evacuate first in that movie. Our, big friends in the East, they weren't so kind, So I'm sorry to the Joker. I didn't mean to compare you to America's allies by, they blew up a hospital that they didn't even evacuate. At least you had the hospital evacuate. So I do want to apologize to the Joker, the most disgusting villain in the world, has nothing on, America's best friend. This is literally the part of The Dark Knight where the Joker tells the news he's going to blow up a hospital, right? The Dark Knight. I'm like, I'll connect this more to The Dark Knight later. Next, Israel will make the Palestinian women and children get in a boat with a detonator across the street from convicts in a boat with one. All right. But then I started to marinate a little bit because they actually did blow up the hospital, right? When I tweeted this, they hadn't done it yet, right? But then they actually did do it. So I was like, wait a minute. That was the plot of The Dark Knight. Like, it's not that was the plot of The Dark Knight. A crazy psychopath tells the news he's going to blow up a hospital. That is literally about a 45-minute period of The Dark Knight. I mean, the movie doesn't really exist without that big piece of it. Right? And so I'm like, wait a minute. That was predictive programming. And Iowa is connected to hospitals. And hospitals are connected to what's going on in the Middle East right now in Gaza. And Israel's breaking the rules. What's going on here? Israel's breaking the rules. We're supposed to be told that it's okay that Iowa got robbed because the rules were definitely violated, like the Geneva Conventions were violated. This was all predictively programmed with a plot in The Dark Knight, an extremely popular movie. Then I started to think, wait a minute, what was that next Dark Knight movie? And then I got real scared. Because there was another movie, The Dark Knight Rises. And we just saw some big predictive programming from The Dark Knight play out. We just saw a central piece of predictive programming in an extremely popular movie get played out. And there was another extremely popular movie in that trilogy. And wouldn't you guess it, somehow Iowa's connected to it. No way, right? No way. I told you it was going to be a little abstract. Right? In The Dark Knight Rises, if The Dark Knight predictively programmed the Gaza hospital bombing, which it did, the plot of The Dark Knight is that an evil psychopath tells the news he's going to blow up the hospital, which is exactly what Israel just did. And Al Jazeera says they violated multiple Geneva Conventions during that time. So if The Dark Knight predictively programmed the Gaza hospital bombing, are there more clues? Not only were the Gaza hospital bombings connected to the Iowa hospital wave tradition, the rules controversy, and The Dark Knight, but there's another Dark Knight movie. And a very famous scene in that movie also has an eerie connection to Iowa Hawkeye football. What am I talking about? Well, there's a team called the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they were nice enough to let their stadium, and look at this stadium, right? Black and gold, a little bit of a building overlooking it. Like Iowa football's got that hospital overlooking that. So what's going on here? So we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, black and white team. Oh, sorry, black and yellow team. Identical uniforms to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Look at that. Don't tell me these aren't the exact same uniform. These are the exact same uniforms. The exact same school colors. And they damn near look like the same stadiums. Right? So in The Dark Knight Rises, Bane blows up this football stadium. I was thinking, whoa. It's too crazy, right? That they would predictively program that, but they just predictively programmed this. We just had a major piece of predictive programming play out. And the trauma-bonded Americans, we better accept it, with all this programming, with this team associated with hospitals. Hey, it's okay to break the rules. Let's break the rules, even though, it's going to rob Iowa. We'll see what the officials say. Iowa's extremely connected to a hospital. So this scene in The Dark Knight where the black and gold team, same uniforms as Iowa, happens, there's this big explosion, right? Big attack. So I started to think, where's this war in the Middle East most likely going? It's most likely going that America is going to get involved, and this is World War III. So how do they get America involved? Could they use a ritual that they have to pay tribute to for a long time? Did they predictively program numerous times before it happened, and they had to pay tribute to it after it happened? Like when 2,977 three-pointers were the exact same needed as the people who died on 9/11 for Steph Curry to break the record with Pete Davidson in attendance. Pete Davidson's dad died on 9/11. He was one of these 2,977 people when they're celebrating the record being broken. They're in New York, playing New York. He's wearing a Michael Jackson hoodie. Michael Jackson died the day Steph Curry was drafted out of Davidson, which is also Del Curry's birthday. So they've predictively programmed this ritual, and they're already paying tribute to it. I think their next ritual is coming. And I think we know what it is. Iowa football equals the Pittsburgh Steelers. Iowa's hospital wave tradition And rules controversy is programming us to accept our ally Israel breaking the rules of war and blowing up a hospital. Right? Consider how sports were used, like the Patriots and the Giants in the 2000s, right? The Patriots dynasty starts right after 9/11 while we're supporting the Patriot Act, the red, white, and blue team. You know, the only team they can't beat is the Giants. Consider how sports were used to get us to accept Middle Eastern pillaging, and how sports are being used now to get us to accept Middle Eastern pillaging with a team connected to hospitals after a Middle Eastern country, Palestine, has a hospital blown up by an American ally, right? So I think they're letting us know some things. I'm going to talk about what I think they're telling us. Iowa football was robbed by the refs in a once-precedented penalty of a non-reviewable judgment call. This only happened with Alex Erickson, who matches with Mike Williams and the Aries variant in 3 base ciphers of gematria. This connection was proven in proof. The NFL was scripted video. So Iowa football got robbed. It only happened once before. The guy who, it happened to before, his name matches with Mike Williams and Aries variant in 3 ciphers. Talked about Mike Williams and his 9/11 ritual recently. His ritual sacrifice. Iowa was chosen because he was hit in the head with a steel beam before his team played the Jets on 9/11. Anyway, Iowa was chosen for 2 rules controversies this week because this was the week of the Gaza hospital bombings and their famous hospital wave tradition that overlooks the Hawkeye Stadium. So Iowa was chosen for 2 rules controversies this week so that we could accept the big rules that Israel broke, which are Article 4 of the Geneva Conventions, right? So we have to accept the past, and they're using sports to get us to do this. Blatantly violating the rules and saying, well, you're going to accept it. Oh, and this is the team really associated with hospitals, right? And it's a home game, so that big hospital was overlooking them. And they probably waved to it that game too, right? Accepting that's what the officials said, even though the rules say otherwise, is the same passive mindset as, well, our ally is committing a genocide and blowing up hospitals. You know, stuff happens, man. It's Israel, right? So that's what I think is going on with the past. They have to reaffirm this ritual, right? Like how they have to reaffirm the sacrifice of Kobe Bryant, how they have to reaffirm, the September 11th ritual with these very extravagant rituals involving Pete Davidson and Steph Curry in New York and, even more recently in the NFL. But what about the future? Right? We saw what happened with The Dark Knight and how that predictive programming ended up coming to fruition when Israel said they were going to blow up a hospital and then did. What about the future, though? In this other Dark Knight movie, are they giving us a clue about the future? Kind of like how when Kobe Bryant died in a when Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash, they had to predictively program it many times. So they had to predictively program the future. So they've reaffirmed the past with this ritual, getting us to accept the Gaza hospital bombing and the blatant Geneva violations that occurred with this Iowa football blatantly breaking the rules controversy, stealing the game from them, right? And Iowa's, associated with hospitals. But they also do something else with this. They predictively program the future, right? They're showing us Kobe Bryant dying in a helicopter before he dies actually in a helicopter in real life. This was about 7 or 8 years before this. And there were other times. There was a commercial, very viral commercial with Kanye West, also involving a helicopter crash. And Kobe even went into a helicopter with Rob Pelinka and played a prank where they turned off the engine. So they had to predictively program the future. Just like they had to predictively program this future. Having the power outage on 2/14 be predictively programmed with Public Enemy dropping "What are you going to do when the grid goes down?" 214 days before Valentine's Day on 2/14. And then that was confirmed, and a gematria expert saved my life by telling me, hey, this was confirmed. J.J. Watt just went to Houston, just went to Arizona, the Valentine State. This is on. This is going to happen. If you're in the 214 area code or Houston or Texas in general, watch TF out. So they predictively programmed the future, and a man told me about it, and it saved my life, saved about 3 other people's life, saved my dog's life, right? Are they telling us something about the future? Let me just say, I don't think they're telling us the future about anything, fortunately, that is going to happen at Iowa. Fortunately. I want to say that. I don't think it's going to be Iowa. But I think they're telling us their next plan. So what could the future bring? The Gaza hospital bombing and Israel telling the news about it beforehand was predictively programmed by an identical scene in The Dark Knight. That scene, that predictive programming has played out. Our acceptance of it was reaffirmed with the broken rules at an Iowa football game, similar to how Kobe's death ritual was reaffirmed and the 9/11 ritual with Pete Davidson and Steph Curry was reaffirmed. The Dark Knight Rises features a scene where Bane blows up a football stadium that the Pittsburgh Steelers play at. This team has the exact same uniform combination as the Iowa Hawkeyes. I am not going to any NFL games. I believe we have been programmed by elites, by a shadowy cabal, by whoever, to accept a false flag attack that will get America involved in the war. A possible alternative, maybe it's not that. Hopefully it's not that. Hopefully it's not that. Right? I bet the 9/11, people who were in those Twin Towers, I bet they hoped it wasn't that. Hopefully it's not that. What could a possible alternative be? The Bane, he wears the mask, right? Bane and the mask. And Alex Erickson has 3 matches with Mike Williams and the Aries variant. I've gone over that connection, right? So maybe this is just about the virus. They're letting us know the virus is coming back. Hey, remember Bane and Bane and the mask? Hey, remember Alex Erickson, right? He matches with the new variant of the virus in 3 ciphers, right? And he also matches with Mike Williams, who we just sacrificed, so he's on your mind. He also matches with Mike Williams with the Aries variant in 3 ciphers. Maybe it's just the virus. Maybe. Iowa's also known for the caucus, and the rules controversy calls forward to the 2024 election, right? The rules controversy, the big ballot thing, right? Was the election stolen? How did 81 million people vote for Joe Biden? Well, they might have a solution to that. And they might have a solution for that in the form of blockchain. One of the big benefits of blockchain could be ending voter fraud, and also related to the virus and jabs. It could be related to medical history. You can track people's medical history with blockchain, and you can track. You can have their voter registration, you could have their state ID, and you could have their medical history all on the blockchain, right? So maybe this going on with Iowa, connecting to the Middle East, the hospital bombings and the rules, Israel was where the Green Pass started, and Iowa was where the election starts every year. Maybe they're getting us ready for a period where we need to be on the blockchain to vote. Maybe in the 2024 election, we're going to have a much bigger, it's going to be even more chaotic than the 2020 election, if you can believe that. And so they're going to try to introduce blockchain. Hey, if we get on blockchain, we can't have voter fraud, right? Iowa and that. I hope it's that. I hope it's, hey, get your vaccines. Hey, you're going to need to get on the blockchain, to vote. But I know how these people work. And they just let us, they just played out a big one. They just played out a big one. And then the next day they had to make sure we were okay with it. Right? A lot of Americans might not have even known this happened on Friday. So they got to make sure on Saturday, hey, you're okay with it. You're okay with it. It's okay to break the rules. It's okay to violate the Geneva Conventions, right? Especially when you're dealing with a team associated with a hospital. Like, Gaza, a hospital was just blown up. So they've reaffirmed a predictive programming ritual for the Dark Knight. I think what they're also doing right now is they're reaffirming a ritual from The Dark Knight Rises. This is all very occult. I have no information at all as to anything besides this. Hey, they've shown us a black and white team connected to the Dark Knight. Hospital bombing. Sorry, they had a bombing at this football stadium. The black and white team is very much associated with, this hospital that was just blown up. I think they're predictively programming for the next false flag. The next one that gets us involved in World War III. So I'm just going to play it safe. I ain't going to any NFL games. And stay safe out there.